passing upon today in an application within has the flexibility, has the accommodation, if you will, such that if entities perceive, believe that their groundwater is being adversely affected, their artesian wells are being adversely affected as a result of this process, they can, I would presume, first approach building and planning services, but ultimately they have the authority under the groundwater exploitation ordinance to come back before this board and ask that it be reconsidered and or revoked. So it's not an automatic 3-year green light, pump as much as you can, with no mechanism in place to pass upon it during that period of time. Anyways, I wanted to make that point again.
I don't know how anybody could prove that. Before we would revoke it, we would have to have proof that difficulty caused that articulated thought.
All I'm saying is there's a mechanism in
But
place.
that's where those monitors, measuring devices in there in terms of flow devices, whether they're collected on a daily basis or on a monthly basis or a yearly basis, but the information is still available to be able to verify those kind of issues if they became an issue down the road. And that leads to kind of a follow-up concern is how does all this relate to the governor's orders? And this is a statewide order, and we were told point blank that at least in the municipal environment, so that would include those of us who live here in the city of Susanville, but it includes the Johnsonville, wherever there's a water district, a water provider. Obviously, ag issues are separate, but or could be broken out. But right now, we're dealing with despite the rains and the snows we're starting to get, a stage 2 mandatory 20% reduction in terms of our utilization of waters, and it affects the groundwater pumping as well as the surface water availability if it's available at all. So in terms of that being imposed across the board, I mean, the ag folks, I mean, I think if there's use of these waters other than just for ag uses, whether it's for domestic needs and so forth, those are something that are going to be affected by these state decrees. And they're going to be using the Water Resource Control Board. The State Water Resource Control Board has promulgated regulations last July 29th in terms of how and to what extent people can utilize the water resources of the state. Because one thing is for certain, and this goes back to the Clean Water Act, the water doesn't belong to anybody in particular. It belongs to the people of the United States. Huh?
I disagree.
Well, that's the theory of the law, and at some point in time, the people of the United States give you the privilege as a landowner to use the water in your midst, but at some point in time, what they give it, they can take it away. And that's part of what all this groundwater management stuff, is all about, is how they're going to figure out. I mean, we're being told, at least in the municipal settings right now, statewide, that you can be fined $500 a day if you use more than we think you should use. And if communities don't enforce that, those particular communities can be fined $13,000 a day. So, I mean, they're ramping up that now. They'll probably, are this side of the mountain, probably not going to see that anytime soon. But believe me, it's coming at you.
The law is there, but the truth is, groundwater is your property right. That's the only that would rely on that ground. Even the new law, that's just to regulate it to keep you from causing damage to the public. And it's not going to happen.
They got you believing that now, but I guarantee you, there's people who have different beliefs, and when they get the upper hand, they're going to change it in a big way.
And so, I guess...
in the bureaucracy...
In Fresno Valley, Sacramento Valley, correct.
To circle back, I just want to emphasize County Council correctly articulated the process, and specifically the language is, if this permit is approved, any interested party or public entity may challenge the continuation of the approved permit during the terms of the permit. So it's subject to somebody coming in here. And then to answer your question, then the burden's on them to demonstrate to you that you feel like you need to cancel the permit. And that's a whole different follow-up.
We'll continue on with the format. So, is there anyone in the audience that has any questions on the staff report? Just questions.
Oh,
Go ahead.
Questions on the staff report, and then we're going to have people speak in favor or against later. Any questions? of
On the staff report?
Yeah.
I am McCain here. I came before this board not 3 years ago regarding this project. I wrote a letter, and I wrote the letter, okay, that's 7 pages. And really, it was about the process of the way the county handled this matter. I am for property owners to have their water and their water use. It's the procedure in which the county decided to put this permitting process through, which I think was mishandled. Another thing is how can you come up and say these reports and then have the environmental agency, or we'll say the individual, say that, well, I don't know, we didn't monitor it, somebody else did it, and you guys can make a decision on it. So this is all I want to say, is I'm for the project to have the water, for the people, and I want to make that clear, not to have the paper misunderstand me and write it in quotes. You know, and I spoke to Mr. Tobosky about this situation and mailed him everything, so Sam would know about it. But there are other issues that I would like to talk about regarding the process of where the county did this situation. Thank you.
I wasn't here when that process happened, Iona, but I've read all the letters and everything, and I'm very, very comfortable with the Exhibit A protecting the members of Lassen County. And I'm very confident in Estelle's doing the right thing. Very confident. Now, the process before I was here, I don't know. But I can assure you, I personally went up there and I looked at all their infrastructure, and it's on the up and up.
Thank you.
For clarity, Mr. Chairman, I think it's important to understand the last permit did not require any monitoring or require the county to do any monitoring.
But they said they were going to do it.
Not that I'm aware of.
It's in the minutes.
Let's keep going reform.
Yeah. Okay. Alrighty. Okay. Anyone else have questions of the staff report?
I have one.
Okay.
Being that you guys got to monitor all this well stuff.
I have your name, please.
Oh, I'm Ralph Minetti.
Thank you.
I'm the property owner next to the Stale Ranch. If you guys got to monitor all this stuff with the Stale Ranch, we weren't approached at all to have somebody monitor our artesian well. So when they are pumping, then they can come down and measure our well too before and after to see if it does drop or not. You know, because I tell you what, pumping water does drop wells. Either we're in a drought or we're not in a drought. Okay? And that's how, you know, we just let the water run. We irrigated our little meadows and feed the cows. I pay taxes just like the Stills pay taxes. And if I can't lease my ground out to the cattlemen because there's no feed there, then do I have to pay taxes on that? You know, do I have to pay, you know, my property's valued now not very much with water. Is it going to be valued the same without water? And I don't want to have to drill another well. You know? And if I drill deeper, then the Stills going to end up drilling deeper. You know, it just goes on and on and on. That's only what my concern is stuff. I just don't want my well to go dry.
Have you gone dry?
It has not gone dry yet.
Changed at all?
It has very little that I could tell,
Insignificant?
but I don't know how to measure that stuff. I just put a mark on the pipe, and when it drops down and goes up, and so if somebody could come monitor that just to see,
Well, it's not the county's responsibility to monitor it.
then it's my responsibility to do it. Okay, and I'll get somebody to do that. But if for some reason my well goes dry, I don't want to go through the hoops and hollers with the Stells or with you guys saying, well, this ain't no good, this is good.
Well, first of all, you have to prove why it went dry. You have to prove that it was still.
Well, it's running now, and if they're pumping water and it goes dry, you're going to tell me that that wasn't the cause of it?
May not be.
Oh, only, the thing's been running for over 50 years. It's been running for 50 years. And I ain't going to say that it's going to go dry, but if it does, it ain't because they didn't pump it. Come on, give me a break. You know, I don't know. That's how I feel about it. But I'm not against them pumping and having do their alfalfa field. But it's just that if I go dry, who's gonna buy me some well? Do I gotta take Lassen County to court?
I mean, Lake County Council, actually, I would assume it would be civil action between you and the Stills.
So,
I don't know.
let me interrupt for just a second. Sorry, Mr. Benet.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
So, I think all of our hope, at least from staff level, would be that you educate yourself on how to properly measure the water level of your own water, and that you do so on a timely basis, so you can know what your water's doing
Right.
when they're pumping.
Right.
And if you detect, and it's incumbent on you as the landholder, the adjacent landholder, the possibly affected landholder, to apprise yourself of your own situation so that if there is an impact, that it doesn't, you go from, oh, well, water is 100% right now, to bone dry, oh my gosh, how'd that happen? And there's a period of time in between when you weren't watching. We rely on you to look after your own rights in that regard. And so I would encourage you to do so. And what I will say is that just what I said some moments ago, which was the mechanism is in place. If you're monitoring your water and you detect a less than immaterial reduction in it, okay, and that's subject to definition, I suppose. If you detect a significant change in it, come to the county and talk to them about it, because the mechanism is in place to revisit the issue if that's the case. And what we're saying, I think Supervisor Pyle is right that if there is a material effect, number one, the permit could be readdressed. But number two, you also have rights and remedies available to you as a private citizen, and you have to consult with an attorney or avail yourself of whatever those are. And so, I don't know. Did I answer your question?
Well, yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Just, the idea.
And I don't think anybody here has said, at least I haven't heard, that they're not. And from what I recall from the Planning Commission meeting, they're not totally accepting your concern and wanting to provide you with some information about how that concern can be respected. And I think that's where we were going.
All right,
Does that answer your question, sir?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I'll do what I got to do, but it's just the idea that if they pump, my well goes dry and they quit pumping and it flows again, then you have, well, that's what happened. But it may not, and I'm not against them, pumping the water. It's just my concern. I don't want a Honey Lake Valley out here when they pump all that water and make it dry. There's a big issue. This water thing, it's going to be pretty tight. So thank you guys.
Thank you, sir.
I have one other question, Maury. In number 6 here, it says export groundwater may only used for agricultural purposes as identified in application. As I recall, last time they had stock water was listed. Is stock water still listed as agricultural purposes?
Number 6,
With
page
stock water,
7. Page 7.
maybe they don't need it for stock water anymore. I remember last time it was one of the requests.
500 cattle.
We just went by the application, so it wasn't listed in the application.
The project description that the applicant provided is on page 29. It's the application.
Okay, we're going to move on now. Mr. Chairman. Yeah, sorry.
I just wanted to, because I think some of the issues that have been raised concerning, the availability or the potential for overdrafting, the shortage, whether it's due to the drought or other kind of uses. But on page 6 or 21 of our packet, it has 006 above it. Out mid-page, there's an interesting discussion dealing with bulletin 118 of California. This is a DWR bulletin dating back to 1997, in which they are assessing Surprise Valley in its totality. So this is just a small portion at the base, so you can't use these numbers at just one location, but in totality, down to 400 feet. The storage in Surprise Valley is estimated to be 4 million acre feet in total. Right as of 1997, and whether it's expanded since then or not, I guess is a matter of determination. But at that time, they were estimating the agricultural use of water in Surprise Valley to be 41,000 acre feet, and the municipal industrial use accounted for 29 acre feet. So we a little over 41,000 acre feet out of 4 million is what the utilization is. And so one of the facts or findings that we have, and that in the next paragraph we get into the volume proposed for the exportation, and that's where the 504 acre feet was generated, where the 12 hours a day pumping, 969,408 gallons, a day, coming up with the, the 3.0 CFS in terms of the flow is how those numbers were generated and so forth. It would take numerous these type projects going full bore for however long to get anywhere close to the 4 million acre feet that's estimated in Surprise Valley. It's probably unique in the state in the sense that it probably has minimal amount of utilization for what is stored there versus other parts of the state where they have a lot of usage but not a lot of storage. And I think that's something that's important to have in the record, that as the board is deliberating on this idea of, if we were using 3.9 million acre feet of the 4 million that's being proposed, then maybe some of the concerns of wells drying up and those kind of things probably would have some merit. But we're not even using a tenth of the water that's supposedly there.
That's true, that, Jim. We're not even talking about the annual recharge.
No, this is just what they
Just
have.
what's there.
Yeah.
The annual recharge is going to make up any more than the still dividend.
Well, yeah, I mean, the 41,000 acre feet that's being used throughout the whole valley is probably less than what the annual recharge is, but that's...
Significant.
Yeah, but I think it's important to make sure that that's part of the public record that we're dealing with. I just found that interesting as I was perusing the document.
Hey, Chairman and members of the supervisors, thank you for hearing this again after just 3 short years.
State your name again, please.
Lonnie, and we've kind of gone over it, so I'm not going to go through it again, other than to say that last time we didn't have a monitoring requirement, but there was some language, because we were trying to figure that out, where the county stood with the state and how all that monitoring was going to come around. This time there is a number 4 of the conditions of approval. There will be the monitoring. What we had last time was the design of the system had to allow for that monitoring, and it did. It had the meters in the well and in the data. The other thing is we have not actually reached that point because of the 3 CFS or the acre feet that we're applying for, we haven't used that because of just that whole process of establishing alfalfa takes a while, and we were growing wheat hay. In 1 year, our pivot came down on us, so that stopped us for a month. So this next year should be a full year. We should know what a good, solid year of alfalfa is going to use as far as water, and that's the amount we will apply for with Nevada for our beneficial use proof of completion water right with Nevada. And then that number will probably change. I suspect it's going to go down a bit. It's not going to be 3 CFS. So next time I see you, we'll have that number as to what we're using exactly. The one thing I'd like to ask you to consider on the conditions of approval is in the number 1, you say it's going to expire September 30 of 2017.
Yeah,
I would like that to be October 15 of 2017. Just because this year we did have to stop before we were ready to stop
we
irrigating.
still need to irrigate.
We still needed
had to
to
stop
irrigate.
your irrigation for this permit.
We had to stop. October 15 being the magic number because that's kind of when, well, this pump is diesel, but our other electric pump, we quit pumping on that date for Surprise Valley Electric. They want all pumping to stop them, or you have to go through special permissions. So that just keeps us all together. We're done pumping October 15. If somebody would propose that, I would appreciate it. And then the other thing is, I just want to encourage you to go ahead and look at changing this ordinance after we have another 3 solid years of history. If the neighbors aren't affected, if, things are going along the way we think they're going to, that we not have to go through this. So look at changing that ordinance to be within a mile, or some sort of a simpler renewal process, or something along those lines.
And I think that would be more than after a couple of experiences, if everything plays out the way it played out the last 3 years. I think that's reasonable.
So if nobody has any more questions for me, I'll.
I have a question for you. We just throw out information. We talk about water monitoring. We're not talking about how many gallons a minute go through that line in a year. We're talking about the static water level, other wells. What is the water level before you start pumping, and what it is after you stop pumping?
Right.
That's what we're talking about. We're talking about monitoring of the water, the static water level in the well.
And that's outlined in condition number 4.
Correct. Correct. So there's a lot of confusion of monitoring means, and in my mind, that's what it means.
And that's what's here as condition number 4, and I think that's the proof.
Right. And I've been doing that for mine since 1974. It's not nothing. DWR did it, not NRCS.
Yeah, and it's not hard, and we did it this year, and well, it can be done.
I mean, move on.
I just have one question on the back to the board staff. Thank you. My line of questioning is just, I would like to be associated with a permit that makes sense, okay? It's the only reason. For whatever reason, it's been determined that the amount of water they're taking, even though it's coming out of the Lassen County, due to the fact that part of their hayfield goes over the line, it's been decided that we need to put limits on the water. Now, that could be arguments for or against. If it's just, it's sort of common sense, it's kind of the same hayfield. It could be argued that it doesn't. You just use what you need to grow your hay. It goes over the county line by a few yards or whatever, no big deal. But it's been decided to put limits on there. And the limits are basically limiting how much can go out of the well at any certain time. That's the 3.0. And then what's the total number of groundwater that can be used over the year, being the 504 acre-feet. But then the way you propose to monitor if that's happening is to measure the static groundwater, which really has no relation. Your static groundwater level could drop if you never pump 1 gallon out of there.
No, I agree with Mr. Pyle in his comments. You want to know what the water's doing like this over time. That's one thing. We want to measure how much is going over to Nevada through the flow meter, and that's another thing.
Yeah, but the mechanism here, okay, you talk about number 3. We authorize, and then you put limits on how much they could use, okay? And then you're going to restrict the export to a maximum of 3.0. So, depending on how many days and hours straight you pump the 3.0, it could exceed the 504 acre-feet. That's the whole exercise you guys did with the Planning Commission. That's how you come up with 12 hours and 169 days. That equaled 3.0 times 12 times 168 is a 504 acre-feet, which really means nothing. That's like and that's why we took it out. That was just numbers. It didn't mean anything. Then the other way that this document says you're going to police the capacity is by measuring the static groundwater level. So my point is you could measure the static groundwater level this spring, and then pump 0 the whole summer. And that's a dry year. You can measure the static groundwater level the next spring, and it could be 6 inches lower. The remedy for the condition is meaningless, is what I'm saying.
But Larry,
Well, there's 2 different things you're
I
talking
could
about.
add to that. What the static water level tells you it is very important, is if you are extracting more water from the basin than is being recharged. So that measurement is very important to give you that information.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, that is correct, but it doesn't mean that Stell's or, other
No, it
people,
don't.
they're not the only ones in the groundwater.
That is correct.
Yeah, so that's what my point is. So the only way to, if there does need to be a limit, which I said, to me, that's a question of its own. I would argue maybe there doesn't even need to be a limit, if you're just saying you're going to use the water for this field. But since you decided to put a limit, there should be a mechanism to police the limit that makes sense. Is where I'm going with this. You know, and if there's a meter on there that cumulatively measures the acre feet, then bingo. And I think the county should be the one to go
He's gonna.
measure and the problem solved.
But that is happening.
Yeah,
That will happen.
That will happen.
Not,
Yeah,
It's not happening.
yeah.
It wasn't conditioned that way the first time. It is now.
Okay, and then okay, so what number on the condition explains that?
Pardon me?
What number on the condition explains that, who's gonna do that?
Well, number 3 talks about the 3 cubic feet per second. That's a
Yeah.
function of the flow meter. We're going to go out there twice a year.
Okay, well, just help me out with the numbers, what you're talking about. 4 says, okay, you've got twice annually and measure the static level. But then there's
Oh,
no relevance to the acre.
So I see what you're saying.
I think what would alleviate the whole concern is to, when the static level is measured, that staff will inspect the meter to make sure it's functioning and record
The
how much
acre
water,
feet.
the acre
Yeah,
feet that has gone
yeah,
through.
exactly.
Yeah, you're correct. That condition should be modified to reflect
It
that.
doesn't mean anything right now. You're saying, yeah, you could go 85 miles an hour, but nobody's ever going to have the radar gun out. But that's all it would need.
So we'll amend condition number 4 to say, during said monitoring inspections, the flow meter information will be collected.
Yeah, and presented, and made available. And since the board is the one putting their signatures and votes on here, the board should be updated twice annually with the water usage. And that will give not only a good reasoning to do away with this whole nonsense, if it proves to be nonsense. I mean, if they're using 300 or 400 acre feet, that could be used as a finding to do away with the whole process of having the Estells come here every 36 months and go through all this. I mean, then you have some data.
Well, to a certain extent, we are kind of dealing with this as though it's in a vacuum, and it's not. There's, in the rest of, on the California side of the border, there's nothing to stop Estells or any other neighbors from drilling another well in the basin and pumping 10,000 gallons a minute.
Yeah.
And that, could have much more dramatic effect on the artesian well.
My point is
than
exactly. That's why measuring the static level doesn't mean anything to the 504 acre feet.
in and of
It's like
itself.
bogus, and I don't like to want to be associated. I mean, it means nothing. I know everybody wants to help, including myself, but I don't want to sign or vote yes on something that I know is like bogus.
Point taken.
It's
So
bogus right now.
I would propose to amend condition 4 with the additional language of during the annual monitoring, the flow meter information will be collected and forwarded to the board for their review.
All right, thanks. Jeez, let me get that. I'm not. Yeah, but. Okay. All right. At this time of this short process, we call on those opposed to the project. Anyone opposed to the project? Okay. Then we'll go to any that want to speak in favor of.
Kind of already did.
Okay.
Want to hear from me again?
No, that's fine. Okay.
You got one minute.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Okay.
Thank you again, the board, Chairman. Iona McCain speaking here. You know, why did we have the ordinance in the first place?
Fish
Franklin Jeans, right? He went and transported water for sale into Reno, right? Fish Springs or whatever the deal is. And now we're going to say, oh, well, because we've got a local individual, we're